Welcome to Space Insiders. My name is Tony Sewell, and as usual, here with my space mate, Rob Ruyak. How you going, Rob?
Great, Tony. I'm so excited about this interview. I mean, we got
Yeah,
Australia, US, and Japan.
yeah,
Super excited.
yeah. This is like I always say this, but people are going to genuinely enjoy. This was one of the most fun interviews we've done with Chris Blackerby, who's the Chief Operating Officer for Astroscale. They're a Japanese company, or they're a global company, but they were started in Japan. They're really pioneering the in-orbit servicing and as he stressed, space sustainability company. And this is a topic that has come up in a number of our interviews, and we'd really wanted to dive into. And I'm super interested in sustainability.
Yeah, it's founded in 2013. And, it's one of these companies, Tony, that is actually doing the work, and they've done
Mm.
multiple demonstration missions, very successful missions. It's very complicated technology. We go a little bit into, what it means to do this kind of work and how hard it is. But even more importantly, the different business models that might drive an increase in that activity over time. Because I think we all know and can agree that anyone that watches this market, sustainability is going to be absolutely critical for any kind of space mission in the future.
Yeah, and I think the timing of this is really interesting too. I reflect on it at the start of the interview. I just listened to the Space Capital guys. They did their quarterly podcast this week, and they were just sort of talking about the amount of space investment in space is less about sort of this sort of niche speculative thing and becoming much more mainstream, and is attracting a lot of serious investment. And we see things like Blue Origin about to start their commercial launch services, Starship really ramping up. This topic of space sustainability is going to become more important, and we get to explore some really interesting areas about like what are those things that we think are going to kind of instigate, I guess, the next level of development in this particular segment. So,
Yep, absolutely.
all right. So before we get to the interview, Rob, any news stories that caught your eye this week?
Well, yeah, one today, which I thought was really cool. So York Space, which is they're based in Denver. They're a satellite manufacturer, among many other things, and they just raised about $630 million in the open market today, which was
Wow.
really interesting.
Yeah.
If you read a little bit about them, they do, they're focused on government as well as kind of commercial customers. They do everything from design of a spacecraft to launching them, ground systems, support, all the operations for various types of applications, and everything from cybersecurity for communications to Earth observation, geospatial. So it's a very interesting company, and it's even more interesting, because I think we've seen kind of this trend of SPACs. We've seen specific companies go through their IPOs, such as Firefly Aerospace, which we all talked about at some point in the last 6 months. When you talk about or read about why they went public and why they need to raise this money is very interesting. We've talked about this on several occasions around defense and national security, but this is basically what their kind of perspective speaks to, and kind of what their press releases are. It's driven a lot by the additional $50 billion in U.S. defense spending, a chunk of that around Golden Dome and missile defense. And they believe that, they're going to be in a really strong position to manufacture, design, and sell cheap forms of satellites for that particular mission. So, I thought it was really interesting to see this. Clearly, it was a successful day for their initial IPO, and wish them the best of luck. But that one caught my eye for a lot of reasons. And so it's, just another exciting moment, I think, in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fascinating. Awesome. All right. Well, a little bit of an extended interview, this one, but as I said, I think people are going to really enjoy it. So I hope you enjoy our discussion with Chris Blackerby. All right, welcome back. And super excited to be welcoming Chris Blackerby to the show. Chris is the Chief Operating Officer at Astroscale. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Tony and Rob, thanks so much for having me.
Great to meet you.
You as
Yeah,
well.
this is really good, and I'm so thankful that you reached out to us to join the show, because this whole topic of space sustainability is something that we've kind of skirted around with a number of discussions and interviews we've had over the last year. But it's such a fascinating topic. And look, I was listening to the Space Capital podcast this week. They put out their quarterly report, and they made an interesting comment around, like, up until now, the space industry has been like building the railroad. Like, they're using the sort of the rail analogy. They've been building the railroad, and the space industry is now transitioning to the utility of the railroad. And obviously that brings a whole bunch of challenges from just an environmental sustainability perspective. So with that in mind, as a primer, tell us a little bit about you and Astroscale to kick us off.
Well, yeah, Tony. Well, those are two really big topics, me and Astroscale. So I'll try to give you a Cliff Notes version off the top. But first, to your analogy, that's exactly right. We're building out the infrastructure for the utilization of an environment that we rely on here on Earth. Space is great from an exploration and an excitement perspective, but it's also really great just from a capabilities perspective. Everything that we get on Earth, we benefit, because of space. And so, yeah, building out that railroad, building out that infrastructure for the utilization of orbits is exactly what we're all about. So from the Astroscale perspective, a lot of people see us as a debris removal company. I'm sure we'll get into this. I like to make it clear from the start of so many of my conversations, we are not a debris removal company. We are a space sustainability and on-orbit servicing company. And so we're focused more on the larger aspects of servicing beyond debris removal. Debris removal is certainly a part of it, but it encompasses so much more than that. It encompasses life extension of satellites. It encompasses inspection of threats. It encompasses awareness and refueling. And all of that ties into that analogy, Tony, that you started out with, is building out that infrastructure in orbit that can assure a long-term sustainability of that space. And so we're much broader than that. We get pegged a lot of times as being this space debris company, but it's much bigger than that now.
I think space debris is, I don't know. You're not really waste management of space, right?
We like that analogy.
I mean, I have debris removal every Friday morning, and it's not that exciting.
But eventually, Rob.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Yeah.
and there will be there, but we're just not there yet. I mean, everything is too nascent. But at this point, you're right. It's not. It can't be that.
Well, I find it. I got to tell you, I've been wanting to talk to you guys for a long time, Chris, because I've always been interested in this particular part of the market, because I feel that there's always a lot of conversation about space sustainability and debris removal and satellite servicing. And there's a lot of companies out there that I think are talking about it because I think it's such a hard technology problem to solve. But you guys have been successful in actually doing it. And you've been around for a while too. So, we'd love to, have you talk a little bit about some of your successes and, what's the technology like? What does it take to do something like this and make it real for people? Because I think a lot that are not close to the market, obviously, you're like, yeah, this is something that really needs to happen. But are there any companies actually doing it yet? And you guys are. So I'd love to give that opportunity to describe a little bit about it.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. It is a multifaceted issue, and it is a technology issue, which I can talk about. It's also a policy issue. It's also a business viability issue. So there's so many things that encompass what we're trying to do. And I think that's what really drew me to the job in the first place, is because it has so many different overlapping aspects, which in some cases seem intractable. Really, it's so hard because so much of the stuff is tough. Rob, you asked about the technology, so I'll focus on that first and we can expand more. But The core baseline of any of the services that we're offering to provide is going to be the RPO, rendezvous and proximity ops, and then the docking or manipulation in one way or another of our client, their target object. And so that's the baseline of everything that we've started on from the first development. And so our first testing mission was called ELSA-D, and that was launched back in 2021. And we were testing the capability to identify and attach to another object in orbit. And the way we did this one was we launched a stacked mission, 2 satellites stacked together. One was our dummy piece of debris or client, and it had a ferromagnetic plate on it. The other was our servicer, and it had a robotic arm with a magnetic capture mechanism. And so we separated them in orbit and then docked them together. Separated them a little farther away, and we used navigation capabilities, both absolute navigation and relative navigation, to be able to approach that object again and be able to image it. It was successful. It was a good first step. It proved that we can do that magnetic capture in orbit, and proved that we were developing the GNC capabilities of identification and approach of a non-communicative object in orbit. So that was the first step. The second step on the tech is the mission that's in orbit right now called ADRAS-J. And in that one, we are inspecting an object that's been in orbit, a JAXA upper stage rocket body that was launched over 15 years ago, and about 11 meters long, 3 to 4 tons, size of a city bus. And we approached it with our servicer, and you probably have seen the images. If you haven't, I'm sure you guys have. But if listeners haven't, take a look at the ADRAS-J, ADRAS-J images. They're online. We got to within 15 meters of this object and took these really exquisite images of this upper stage rocket body in orbit. And JAXA wanted us, it's a JAXA mission, Japan Space Agency, they wanted us to circle around it 3 times. And so we did that using our thrusters to circle around the object. Fantastic success. And it all is the baseline for all of these other missions that we want to do anything, refueling, repair, inspection, life extension. You got to be able to come in close to an object. And we were doing this to an object, again, fully non-communicative. So we were able to approach it without talking to that object. That's the big step we took.
Was that, so we met with Will Crow, the founder of HEO, a couple of months ago, and was this related to the Astroscale partnership with HEO?
Not that mission,
not that
exactly.
One. Okay.
But we did do some things with Will and the HEO team on it as well. They did some tracking for us and some observations for us. We're good friends, long-term friends with Will, and as you probably saw at the IAC this year, we signed an agreement to continue to try to work together. We have the same mission mindset.
No, awesome. So I'm interested, like to I mean, there's so much happening, particularly in low Earth orbit at the moment, and it's only going to accelerate. Like we've got Blue Origin coming online with heavy lift. Starship is promising to just like exponentially increase the amount of things we're shooting off into space. How attentive is the industry to this issue, and how much of a how are you engaging with customers on this today?
I would say the attentiveness in the industry has grown substantially. I started with NASA in 2003. I started with Astroscale in 2017. Throughout that time, people were aware of it. The movie Gravity came out in 2014. I mean, that's kind of a tipping point, so to speak, of an awareness in the public sector when you can have a Hollywood movie saying that, realistic or not, we can talk about that later. But the idea that this is an issue that has to be addressed, the general public started to recognize that this might be something bad out there. So you could see that there was some awareness growing. But even when I joined Astroscale, you just can do a survey. If you could go back in time to 2018 Space Symposium, which is the first one I went to with Astroscale, we had a tiny booth. We had a couple of people there. trying to talk about, at the time, really the space debris side and the sustainability side. But if you did a survey of the booths around Colorado Springs back, this was 8 years ago, you wouldn't have seen too many booths, too many companies that were really talking about this as a problem to solve. You guys go to conferences, you guys do a survey of the booths now, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Even companies that aren't sustainability or servicing companies are talking about the need for sustainability or the need for approach or close-in inspection. And now what also has changed is the defense application side of it, which again was always there. It was always a bit in the shadows. People weren't really talking about it much. It's pretty overt now. And so the awareness, Tony, if you're talking about are people in the industry aware, both launch vehicle companies and satellite operators and other downstream users, they're aware. So the awareness has certainly grown, and just through the non-scientific assessment of booths that mention the word sustainability, it's out there. Now, the next question.
Is it turning into real action?
There you go. There you go. That's the next step.
Yeah.
How can we turn awareness into action? And that was a big part of when I joined, even a big part of our conversations around the fledgling team. And when I joined Astroscale, again, to weave in some background of the company into these conversations, when I joined, there were about 20 people in the company, 25. I was one of the only non-Japanese people in the company. We had an office in Tokyo and a small one in Singapore, and we were just starting to get into the UK. When we would meet with our team and talk about how to take these next steps and grow it, a big part of it was the awareness part. Getting out there and speaking about this, working with policymakers, working with users, and trying to find a way to raise the awareness, which will then lead to action. So where we are now on that continuum is the recognition is definitely there. The competition has grown. Back then in 2017, when I joined, there weren't really any other companies that were talking about it as overtly as us. Now there's a lot. Again, you do a survey of the industry and there's a lot more competition for what we're trying to do, which is a great thing. It shows there's actually a market. When there's no competition, there's no market, right?
Yep.
So it shows that the market is existing. And so that's good. So we're moving along that line toward a commercialized capability. We are not to the end yet. We are not to the point where commercial companies recognize it and there's standing, consistent contracts coming in. Not there. So where we are, though, is government action. And that's, as with any deep tech sector, that's going to be the first step.
That's great. So, you were talking about when you joined Astroscale. So, Chris, I'd love to learn more about you and your background and why you went to Astroscale. So tell us a little bit more about your background and your time at NASA and kind of what led you to this incredibly interesting company and job that you have now.
Life is a long, winding path, Rob.
Yes, it is.
It takes you to many different places, and mine is no exception. And I didn't start with that dream. I wasn't one of those people who was like, I got to be an astronaut or I got to be an engineer. In fact, when I graduated college in Virginia, the first thing I did was take my hard-earned degree and drive across the country. And,
I did the same thing.
Did you?
Oh yeah, loved it.
Yeah.
DC to my best friend from college was from Vancouver, Washington, right outside of Portland, Oregon. We went from DC all the way over there and then down to San Francisco Bay Area where I started my career. And it was one of the most eye-opening things. I loved it. It was great.
I would recommend it. It's fantastic. So I did the same thing. And so I was almost the same path. I won't ask you what year that was. I think I probably predated you, but
I don't know about that, but we don't need to talk about it.
Rob's pretty old.
If people are watching, they can tell and make a judgment.
Yeah.
And so I was from Virginia. I was starting in Richmond, Virginia, and I drove across. I actually worked at a ski resort in Colorado for a
You
winter.
had a more fun job out of college than I did.
Yeah, well, if you call it, is that a job? I guess.
Oh yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah.
And then I did the same. Drove up the West Coast. Got to Seattle. So I spent a couple of years in Seattle, Washington. so near where you were. And
Great
I
city.
taught, it's a fantastic place. I taught high school there for a couple of years, wanted to do something else. I won't go through the whole story, but I moved to Japan and taught there and just kind of was trying to figure out what next. But during my travels, I really started thinking about international business and politics. And so I went back to school for that. And then from there, got a fellowship with the government and NASA. And that's what really kickstarted my NASA career, was doing outreach and politics and strategic development around space in the early 2000s. And I spent about 10 years at NASA headquarters doing that, reaching out to partners, developing global partnerships, advancing NASA's interests with partners. It's kind of like a State Department of
Oh,
NASA.
it sounds like a great job.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
It
does.
was,
I didn't even know
yeah.
there were NASA attaches
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
like
and
that.
this is, Tony, this is in DC. So this is like a diplomatic officer within
Yeah.
NASA headquarters that's out there trying to
Very cool.
develop what NASA's relations are, writing agreements, negotiating details and agreements with different partners. During that time, I also was the executive director of the NASA Advisory Council, which is this group of graybeards that advises the administrator on what to do overall. And so I was lucky enough to be the executive director when Jack Schmidt, who was the last person in the way you define it to walk on the moon, was the chairman. And Neil Armstrong was on it, and Eileen Collins and Neil deGrasse
Wow.
Tyson. It was
Oh
just
my
this,
God.
and then me,
That's
and then me.
amazing.
It
Oh,
was
wow.
it was
awesome.
awesome. But it was such a great way to just get a feel for the history of the agency and the expansiveness of space and the impact. And so we were talking about all aspects of what NASA could do, and these advisors were providing input. And I had one time where I was at a dinner in KSC with Jack Schmidt and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and they were just talking about sharing memories about the Apollo days and
Yeah,
Kennedy.
that's pretty crazy. I mean,
It's like pinch yourself kind of moment for anybody in the space.
I've seen
sector.
Buzz Aldrin a couple times at some of these, the space prom, the
Yeah,
Goddard
sure.
Space Center, and
Yeah.
he still walks around. He's I can't remember how old he is. He's like 94,
He's got to be in
maybe.
the 90s now.
Yeah, but he doesn't look it, and he's
No,
bumping around. And you look at someone like that, and you're like, I cannot believe he walked on the moon. I mean, it's
it's incredible.
unbelievable. Yeah,
It's incredible.
it's nuts.
So it was an awesome experience. And then, so
Yeah.
from there, though, I was always looking to go back overseas. I spent time in Japan, and we do have these attaches, Tony, that at the time we had one in Russia and one in Paris and one in Tokyo. The one in Russia is not there anymore.
Yeah,
Give you a
funnily
few
enough.
guesses.
Yeah. I think Daryl Shuck, one of our previous interviews, used to work with us. My first hire at AWS, he's at Honeywell now, but Daryl Shuck, we interviewed him. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he was serving as an attaché for a while at the Johnson Space Center
Okay,
outside of Clear Lake.
for Moscow?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, well, so there's a few different ones that show up because NASA has these international agreements. Like in Japan, we have a few people that go to Tsukuba Space Center, where JAXA has a space center. The actual attaché, the one who's in the embassy and supporting the ambassador, there's only a couple of those, and that's the one in Tokyo Embassy, and there's one in Paris at the U.S. Embassy in France.
Wow, terrible places to be.
Awful. The hazard pay. I appreciate the sympathy,
Terrible
guys, and
food.
all of my NASA counterparts back in DC. I know they felt for me every night as I represented them.
I hope your answer was just, I'm just much better at this kind of thing than you are.
Acting like that always engenders such sympathy from your
Totally.
fellow colleagues, Rob.
Well, you got to give up on that. You got to move on. Yeah.
But I did. I got this job as the attaché at the embassy in Tokyo in 2012. And so came over here and did 5 years in the embassy, and it was incredible. So being able to work with all of the colleagues from all these different agencies in the embassy, support the ambassador, who at the time was Carolyn Kennedy, and you might have heard of her father, who has a pretty impactful presence in space history. So she was really interested in all of that as well, and so
Wow.
it was fun to support her and bring in astronauts to the embassy, take her to launches, brief her on all the different activities that were going on, and so that was a
Very
fantastic
cool.
job of 5 years.
So, and then from there, you went to Astroscale. And is there one thing I'm kind of interested in? It was when we were talking to Will from HEO. One of the things that we learnt was that they were, as an Australian business, they were kind of uniquely positioned to sort of develop the area that their business went in. Is there something unique about Japan that led to Astroscale becoming what it is today? And is this an area that Japan has particular? Well, it is an area that Japan is leading in, and I'm just interested in why that's the case.
Yeah, I think Japan is unique in driving this sector. I'm not sure if at the time of the founding of Astroscale, it could have been founded in any other country. This was 2013 is when Astroscale was founded. I, as I said, got here in 2012 as the attaché, and I heard about the company right away. The founder at the time was actually based in Singapore. He's a Japanese individual, had worked for the Japanese Ministry of Finance named Nobu Okada. He went through, as he'll tell you himself, a self-proclaimed midlife crisis. He had done entrepreneurship. He had gone to an MBA, he had started a couple companies, and he was trying to think of what to do with his life next as he was turning 40. And he looked into the space sector and said, this is an issue that needs to be resolved. And he went to conferences and heard some people starting to talk about debris removal and sustainability, but didn't see anybody doing anything with it. And he didn't have a space background. He had been to space camp when he was a kid, but that kind of started to have him think about how to resolve it. Japan, I think, is just a unique place for it. Nobu is a unique character himself. He's a unique person to be able to drive this. He's outgoing and he brings Japan sensibilities with the kind of excitement of an entrepreneur. This is a great combination. But it was also the Japan mindset, investors in Japan, government in Japan, that helped to drive this. And, who I think, Rob, you said you've been to Japan. Tony, maybe
I have been once.
You have been as well.
I'm going to be spending a lot more time there this year. I'm so excited about this part of my new role.
Well, that's great. I look forward to seeing you here.
Yeah.
And when you come, you'll notice the aspects of responsibility and cleanliness. And it's kind of a stereotype. People talk about that all the time. It's true.
It is true.
It's reality.
100%, especially the toilets. Those are unbelievable.
We could have a whole podcast about that, Rob.
Yes, we
could. I love
could.
the Japanese toilets.
It's unbelievable. People are going to think we're weirdos until you got to go there.
It's an odd experience the first time, but then
yep.
You go to the most like out of the way truck stop like place in the middle of the mountains, and you go to the restroom, then the toilets are as good as like in a 5-star hotel. They're incredible. Wait, what were we talking about again? Oh yeah, sorry. It's distracting.
This is definitely going to come up.
We're talking about whatever we want to talk about, Chris. As long as it all goes back to space, right?
So this idea of cleanliness on the streets too. You walk on the streets, and when you're here, and I'll advise people listening too, take a look. Like look on the sides of the alleys as you're walking through any part of the city in Tokyo. You're not going to see much trash. It is going to be really clean. It's going to be really orderly, and that's just Japan writ large, honestly. And so I think that mindset permeated, and I think that mindset allowed Nobu to be able to develop this story and this messaging around the importance of doing this and not wasting things, taking care of your environment, being considerate of others is another big thing in Japan. So, it's a very packed together country. Japan is a country of mountains, as you can tell if you look at a map. And these big cities are packed into these small areas, so everybody is crowded up close together.
Like Tokyo is vast. It's incredible.
It is. It spreads out a lot, but it's also got, in this Tokyo, Yokohama area, there's 25, 30 million people, a lot.
Yeah.
and a lot of times living close together. So there's a responsibility and a respect, and that cultural aspect, infused with this geographic situation. I think all of that played a role in helping Nobu to grab a foothold here and develop, get some funding, raise some money, get some early stage contracts, and I think that started the ball rolling on this overall. So I'm not sure if it could have been done in another country.
I never thought about this, but what you just said is really interesting. I think there's a, not to be cheesy about it, but there really is a beauty about what you actually just referenced. When I went there, it was really funny. I remember looking out my hotel window and I saw these yellow lines all up and down the sidewalks. I was like, "What in the heck are those yellow lines for?" And I asked somebody. I didn't bother looking up. I thought it'd be kind of cool to ask someone that was there. And I found out it was actually for the blind, those that had restrictive eyesight, and the elderly, because it was obviously bright for the sight part for those that had reduced vision, but it was also, had a real strong texture to it when you walked across it, and it was, for all these other different, people that have, physical challenges, and knowing where the sidewalk was going from point A to point B. It wasn't like in the US in some cities now they're putting them like right at the edge of the street, but it's like really aligned to help people. And I just thought that was fascinating. I don't know if we have that same kind of culture here in the US. And then the other part is, I was talking to some of the locals there as well, and they talked about how, when you're on the subway or other kind of public transportation, and when people see a young child that might look lost or might just look by themselves, there's this kind of cultural reaction that, I need to go, talk to that child and take care of that. Like everyone's children are everybody's children, right? People's children are everybody's children. And I heard that multiple times. And so what you were just saying were reminding me of those things I learned when I was there. And you know what? It's not crazy to think that's a real big reason why sustainability has been something in space has been something that was, kind of de facto born out of Japan, out of Tokyo, based on the kind of the cultural nuances and uniqueness of that country. It's really interesting.
I think you're right, and it's interesting. We can do like a kind of retrospective history assessment and think about how that might have happened elsewhere. And I don't think we'd find it because of the things you mentioned,
Hmm.
Rob. And I'd ask people to come here. The yellow lines, that's real. When you come, take a look, and you'll see the little
Yeah, I'm going to have a look at that. Yeah.
bumpy yellow lines all over, and that's exactly what it's
They're
for.
everywhere.
The whole
They're,
city.
they're literally everywhere. And
Yeah,
and it was like, God, they kind of look funny.
yeah.
But then, when you learn why they're there, it makes so much sense. It's
So how is Astroscale, I guess, uh, made progress with this chat with this national mindset around sustainability and looking after our orbital environment? Like how challenging has it been to bring that to the space industry? And like what you talked about how Astroscale has been successful in number of funding rounds and whatnot, but from a business maturity perspective and sort of how you see the business developing in the future, like how do you assess that?
The market is challenging. The space as a sector is challenging, as we all know. And so it has taken time. And so I'll go back to what I said earlier. We started here with Astroscale in 2017 from my own story. Company was about 20 to 25 people. The mindset when the CEO hired me and brought me on to the global board was to grow, the company. And we had the recognition, the two of us, that this was not going to be a industry that could survive in one country alone. The amount of funding necessary to make this work was going to require a global presence. Getting people on board, the team that we had to gather. Not everybody wants to move to Japan, and so we needed to have presence around the world to get that workforce that was able to solve this problem. And then the contracts were going to be government contracts. We're gonna have a tough time getting commercial contracts off the bat. You guys both work for a commercial company, obviously. This is a deep tech issue, and this is a problem that is not a commercialized problem just yet. And so, like with any deep tech, you need government funding.
And there's a lot of national security sensitivities too.
A lot, and
it's getting more so that way. Yeah.
And now that is that's a business driver for us. the national security side. At the time, it was almost a restrictor or something that made it more difficult because the dual use capability was a third rail that a lot of people didn't want to touch. And so we really veered away from that side of things for a long time and really focused on the debris removal and sustainability side. Another reason that probably Japan was an ideal place for this to start because of Japan's history and focus on peace and sustainability, the last 70 years in particular. So that probably helped as well. But we knew that there was going to be interest around the world, and we knew that we're going to need to have these different countries to make this work. And that started our expansion story, Tony. It started us building up that office in the UK, opening an office in the US, and growing from there.
And it does sort of seem like we're in a time where there is a real land grab going on for the beachfront real estate in space, and with a backdrop of at least seemingly a number of like the US is becoming more US centric, and you're seeing a change in the way that countries around the world will work together. So how do you see this sort of changing geopolitical environment impacting the ability to really make sure that, like, in a time of huge acceleration of assets in space and a changing geopolitical environment, because regulation is going to be a really important part of this. I don't think this is a something that's going to be solved with self-regulation and codes of conduct. So how do you think about that?
This is the fundamental issue that's going to drive not just Astroscale, but the space sector at large. This conflicting, well, I say conflicting, but let's try to make it collaborative aspect between these two big themes that you just raised, Tony. These themes of sovereign capability and defense and the need to build out a technology that your country has in-house, with this shared aspect of space utilization and long-term sustainability. How can we reconcile those? Somewhat rhetorical question, but also just
It's a big issue.
Just asking that.
I'm not answering it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because I remember this story when there were the floods in Houston a few years back. They were really bad. I remember seeing the images of the Houston airport, like planes underwater. And they were talking, so Houston, I was surprised. I didn't realize it was like the second or third biggest city in the country.
Yeah.
And they talked about why Houston has become such an economic powerhouse and has developed so much was because there wasn't regulation around development. But because there wasn't regulation around development, no one paid attention to how concreting this massive floodplain was going to exacerbate these issues when you have these once in a generation storms that completely floods the city. So there's that tension between regulation and development, and I think it's an interesting analogy for what we're potentially going to deal with in space.
And it's made so much harder because Houston, to use your example, was actually under a regulatory regime, the United States, Texas. I mean, it had an oversight that had some authority to enforce laws and to make sure that people followed a certain path. Space, it's not that way. I mean, we have UN COPUOS, and we have space acts, and we have a history of collaboration, but the enforceability of actions there can be questionable. I mean, we have to rely on peer pressure and best practices and things. So in space, it's that much more challenging to develop this. And this to bring back to Astroscale, and then we can jump again on how we solve this problem. We can figure this out, the three of us, from the next 20 minutes.
Definitely.
We can do it.
The whole idea of Astroscale, the name Astroscale. Astro is obvious, space, but the scale is the balance between sustainability and development. Astroscale was never about restricting the development of space. We were about doing it sustainably. And that was where the scale comes in, is to try to find that balance. We don't want to see regulations imposed that restrict innovation and restrict development and investment. That doesn't help anybody. But we also don't want to see an environment where people don't pay attention to anything other than the next quarter returns or the next year's, revenue, and they need to think more long term. So fundamental to the founding of the company, and something that is still on my mind constantly, is how do we, Astroscale, financially grow, but also stay sustainable? And then by a larger extension, how does the space ecosystem grow and continue to be developed, but also remain sustainable?
So, so on what about the flip side of this, Chris? So I think, we all know that regulations are set in certain periods of time when you have some known knowns. Like there's political impact or influence. There's all these types of things with regulation in general. On the topic of sustainability, do you think there's a more sustainable answer to achieving more sustainable space? And what I mean by that is, do you think there are maybe some non-obvious incentives that can be created for improved sustainability if there's more competition in the market? Is there something there where, it is such a good business that, refueling and mitigating collisions and deorbiting unused spacecraft is actually such an incredible business that who wouldn't want to be in it? And as a outcome of that, right? Because the free market system is rewarding people for being sustainable. Like, what do you think that is? Do you think that's something that can be achieved?
Do.
And what needs to be,
And
what needs to happen maybe to do that? Yeah.
there needs to be a bit of a mindset shift, I think. We're still the space sector, or any industry, it can get inertia doesn't allow it to take those next steps, and it's easier to stick with what we know and what's been done than try to take a risky leap into something different or new.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we're still on the cusp of getting toward that. And eventually we need to get to a place where sustainability is built into the production of everything that we're doing in space, from launch vehicles to satellite development. And right now it's not. It's starting to, but it's not. But when we want to get toward issues around, say, modularity and replacement, and building in the capability to be serviced before a launch, these kind of, and we see the green shoots popping up on this. You might have seen recently NASA announced this Habitable Worlds Observatory next step, this mission that's going to launch in 2040 or so, a space science mission. Part of it wasn't highly publicized, but part of their contracts that they were awarding for that was one to our Astroscale US office to make it serviceable, to make that observatory be able to be serviced so that it could be extended its life, or it could be repaired in the future. Hubble was repaired, but we had to, reconfigure some things to be able to make it happen. Let's start building stuff before they launch so they can be repaired. The OneWeb constellation, on 80% or so of the satellites of the OneWeb constellation, has a docking plate on it.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
Plate on it. And we were part of the assistance on helping to design that. The surface. We're building a mission right now out of our UK office that's going to go up and service one of those satellites. So we're seeing these steps, Rob, that's going to start leading to a serviceable ecosystem in space. And it's got to, the various things have to happen. Policy things have to happen. We need to keep proving the tech to make customers confident that we can do it. So we know that it's on us, but it's also on the customers to start, or the satellite operators to start building that into their plans before launch. And so we're going to see this shift. And right now it's gradual. Are we going to hit a tipping point, a very clear watershed moment? I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
What do you think that might be? I mean, what would jolt everyone into action on this? I mean, there's any number of things that could happen, I guess. But
it's hard to say still. And I'll tell a short anecdote on this. Back in early 2020, don't remember what the details were, but there was a close approach that was being predicted. The ground-based observatories were saying, there's a very high percentage chance that in the next 2 days there will be a collision between these two objects, similar to an Iridium Cosmos collision. Yep. And for those who don't know, back in 2009, active Iridium communication satellite collided with a Russian piece of space debris and created a lot of debris. That was the most, big picture thing that created some awareness. That was 15 years ago now. That didn't create the action that we need. Back in early 2020, there was a prediction that it was going to happen. And my comms team was calling me and saying, I've got all of these people who want to talk to you if this happens. If this collision happens, so stand by. And if it does, be prepared because you're going to have to go on. And I was saying to them, it's not if. They should be wanting to talk no matter what, because this is just an example of the risk being there. And luckily it didn't. And then they didn't want to talk to me. They found something else to talk about.
Well, and I don't and we've talked about this before. I mean, I think most of the population is blissfully ignorant about just how important space is to everything that we do, like down to being able to go to the bank and withdraw some money because of the reliance on GPS and whatnot. So, I mean, it's almost like there'll be some catastrophic event that's going to have a massive impact before any real change.
I think the insurance industry needs to enter this market. I personally feel that there's going to be so much stuff up there, right? There already is, but there's going to be more and more. I think, more companies are going to need to insure themselves, whether they're operating a satellite or, I don't know, some other mission on
But
orbit.
I think that's what Will was saying is like the insurance companies are pulling out because it's like the risk is too high for them to insure stuff in LEO now.
But I think there's going to be, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. Now we're playing fortune teller here, but I think there's going to be a big market for insurance companies because there's going to be so much of it. And it's going to start getting more competitive. Everyone's going to be signing up for the lowest premiums. And I could honestly see, like, if I'm an insurance company, and I want to have a differentiated product to sell, I mean, why not look at like partnering with an Astroscale or, highly recommending my client that I'm going to service to say, look, you sign up with Astroscale. We're through our actuarial analysis, we can tell that, if you're going to be using a service from Astroscale to deorbit your satellites and service them and make sure they're not going to collide with other people, then, you're going to have a lower premium. It's just, there's going to be, I'm just wondering if that's going to be more of a competitive market driver for this particular sustainability topic. And I kind of feel like that could be a big possibility. I mean, because again, I think it's so fun to do this because there's so many new business models that are going to pop up and that are popping up. And sometimes when you look at them, you're like, that's not that much different than the auto industry. It's not much different than, when I'm getting insurance for my home or frankly, life insurance, right? Like if I work out more and I don't eat as much red meat and I'm Tony and I'm eating quinoa all day, then, I might have a less chance of getting a heart attack when I'm 65. We're going to give him a lower premium, right? So I could see some of those business models popping up over time.
A lower premium, but life's just not as fun if you're doing that, right? Tony?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
No, I'm with
the
you.
deprivation's not fun. That's why you get no dry January. It's just
I don't know. It's fun to think through that, though. Yeah.
It is, and it is fun, but it's also it's what we think about all the time, Rob. And it's we've gone down that path, and we still do talk to insurance companies. They're close contacts of ours, and we've worked through both the practicalities of it, which you just described, Rob. Lower premiums for preparing your satellite, for contracting with the service. We've talked through those models, and we've talked to them about the bigger picture strategic side of it. And we still do, and we still will, and we hope that will come. It's not going to be near term. I don't think it's going to be near term. I mean, we would like to be able to provide even further service. We'd like to be able to provide like the service to do if a satellite fails on orbit and the insurance company wants some proof of capability, and there's some forensics they need. We'd like to be able to provide that close-in inspection like we did with
that's cool.
today, and be able to say, here's what happened, and then you can process that claim. But it's still not there yet. And the question that I have to wrestle with all the time is, what's it going to take for us as a company and for our sector on servicing overall to get to that point. And not to bring in the trope of the valley of death, but that's what we're all in as a startup, is how we know what's coming. We know that insurance is going to be a big issue. We know that servicing and sustainability and life extension and refueling, it's all going to happen. I have no doubt. The question is when. The question is when. And the question
Yeah.
is, how do companies continue to make that happen before, Tony, what you were saying, which is that catastrophic collision, which wakes everybody up. And the risk, of course, on this is the wake up to that problem is almost when it's too late.
Yeah.
So as a problem happens in other things, it's too late for the near term. Like you use a disaster thing like levees breaking in a hurricane or something, that it's terrible at the time, loss of life, loss of property, damage, terrible, but repairable. We build up a new wall. We implement better systems. When that happens in space, if there is
It's
a
not
massive
localized.
and it's not short term. So it's not localized. It impacts everybody. And then an accident that creates thousands of pieces of debris at 700 kilometers altitude is not going to be coming down for hundreds of years. So it adds a growing level of risk overall. So where we have to start on this is what we're trying to do, which is focus on where the near-term need is and the near-term demand is. And we see that a lot with the defense side and security. And no secret. You can look at contracts we're signing. You can look at the contracts that are being signed by other competitor companies. A lot of it is through that and the awareness and the development. And this is not so rare. Look at any deep tech industry throughout history, and you see where that starts. And you look at the internet. You look at GPS. You look at aeronautics. 100 years ago, what was driving 15 years ago, what was driving the development of airplanes was, World War I, and then developing that. And then that leads to more of a commercial capability, which leads to now. So we're moving though. We're getting there. So we're definitely farther along than we were when I joined 8 years ago.
It's exciting.
That's awesome. So Chris, just as we kind of wrap things up, like what are some cool things that you're excited about that are coming up in the next sort of 12, 18 months with Astroscale that people might want to tune into to learn more about the mission of what you guys are doing?
We need more time. You said we're wrapping up, Tony. I've got so much to talk about.
I know.
If that's the question. There's always so much exciting happening. I talked about where we were. Let me give a little view again about where Astroscale is now. When I joined, again, about 20, 25 people, I was really the only non-Japanese person in the company. We are now about 700 people. We have offices in Japan, UK, France, Israel, and the US.
Did you say 700?
It's about 700.
Wow, I didn't know you guys were so big. That's amazing.
And it is, of those 700, where now we're 65% non-Japanese.
Yep.
So we're a global company. We have about 220 or so people in our Japan office, a couple hundred in the UK, over 100 in the US. So we're substantive offices in each of our areas. And in each of our countries, we're building out missions. Because of the nature of what we've been talking about, this desire for sovereign capability and government investment, we see governments wanting to have these missions in their country. So what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do as a global COO is make sure that we can develop these solutions locally for customers in country, but also do what we can in line with export control and IP regulations to share capabilities, to share customers, to share best practices among our entities that can help support the countries that we're located in. And so we've got missions in all of our areas that we're working on. We've got a mission in the U.S. to prove to start the steps on refueling in space. Mission with the Space Force that called the Provisioner, that we're working out on this mission to prove refueling. We've got a mission in Japan that is going to be approaching a satellite and taking close-in observation. The first one that we're doing now, or the one we're doing now, is approaching an upper stage rocket body, conical shape. Next mission in Japan, approaching a satellite with solar arrays, so a different problem set that we're working on. Mission in the UK, the one I mentioned, to go grab onto that OneWeb satellite and deorbit that, the one that's been prepared with the docking plate. We have a follow-on mission to our current mission in Japan, the one that's doing the inspection. We have a mission, the second phase of this, Address J2, is going to grab onto that object, that upper stage rocket body, and bring it down. We're working on, so there's what I just went through,
Yeah,
four or five. We've
incredible.
probably
You
got
guys are
4 or
busy.
5 more over the next 3 years. So
Wow.
it's a lot. Anybody can reach out to me anytime or check out our website, and you'll be able to see all the stuff we're doing.
That's so exciting. Well, Chris, we like to kind of wrap up our interviews with just something a little bit more lighthearted, and I'm not sure how exciting this question is, but I know that I know a lot of people that, I mean, Rob and I have I've only been to Japan once. Rob, I think Rob is the same, and it's such an incredible place. And I think for a lot of people, it's a kind of a mysterious place. If you haven't been there, you sort of look at it from afar, but you've lived there for a long time. And I'm just interested, like, what would be the most sort of surprising and fun thing about living in Japan that most people wouldn't expect or wouldn't know about?
Oh, the toilets.
The toilets.
No, I'm just kidding. That's a little callback. It's surprising and fun can be two different things, Tony. Surprising. I don't know if this shouldn't be surprising, but when I've lived here, I forget how different I am. I forget how different I am sometimes in my look and in my talk. You just kind of get into the whole realm of things, and then I catch my reflection in the subway mirror, and I see that no, I'm not like all of these other people here.
Yeah,
and so that was a little surprising, but it's in a way, I guess that's good, because you're adapted to such a degree. There is such a kindness in the country, so it's a very interesting place. I mean, it's still 98% ethnically Japanese. So it's a pretty homogenous place, but at the same time, you guys have both experienced it. Anybody who would come here would experience it, that you're treated so well.
kindness is real. Like when I first went there, I was traveling on my own. I was recommended to stay in a one of the Japanese business hotels. Don't stay in an American hotel, so you can get the real experience. And I arrived in the evening, went out for dinner. I found this great little curry place around the corner. I didn't have any cash. I just assumed I'd be able to pay with credit card, and I had my dinner, and then the proprietor didn't speak a lick of English. And then I had this oh shit moment. I don't have cash to pay this guy. And we were able to communicate where an ATM was, and sent me away, and I came back 15 minutes later. He was so happy that I came back. I think he expected that he would never see me again, and he was so happy. Just a little snippet of my first experience of Japan.
And that's a great example, Tony, of what's so, I guess, surprising and fun is doing stuff like that. And advice to anybody who's coming: take a chance. Go out there and take a risk and just do it, because you're going to have a great story, and you're going to be treated well, and the risk is pretty low in terms of anything bad happening. And the trust that proprietor had with you, that permeates to everything. The amount of stories that you guys have heard that I've personally experienced, where I've lost my phone or I've left my wallet somewhere and not thinking I'd get it back, and then of course you get it back. You can leave your phone on your table at a restaurant and go to the bathroom and leave it there to hold your spot, and it'll still be sitting there when you come back. So those kind of aspects are a bit of you hear them a lot, and it sounds like a kind of a stereotype, but it's true, and it's what makes the country pretty awesome. And so I've been here 13 years now, and it's a great place to be.
And how's your Japanese? It's got to be incredible, right?
Incredible. Just don't ask me to say anything, Rob.
I was going to ask you to say something. No. I mean, come on, Chris. You've been there 13 years. Say something in Japanese.
It's passable. I have 2 Japanese daughters. My wife's Japanese, and my kids are Japanese. And the time when it struck me as to how far behind I was from them, I mean, I was way better than them when they were 6 months old. My Japanese was awesome compared to my kids' Japanese. But when my kids became
It's funny, my English was
or
really much better than my 6-month-old too. It was weird.
when my kids became like 5 or 6, and I was having conversations with my in-laws in Japanese, and my kids could start to understand what was going on, my older daughter said to me later, she's like, "Dad, your Japanese is really bad." Yeah, thanks. So
It's a
I can get around,
beautiful
Rob,
language.
but I always can improve.
I'll tell you the thing that another thing I loved about it was it is a beautiful language to hear, but it's a even more beautiful language to see. And so
Yeah, the
the
writing.
nice thing I like about going to a place like that is like, you know, if you speak English, you should be expected to try to speak Japanese. You shouldn't
Mm,
expect everything to be in English. And
yeah,
when you walk around and you see all the beautiful characters and it's in the art and it's in the signs, that's another unique thing for me that I thought was really special about the place.
that's a
So
great place. It's a great
yeah,
place. Well, I'll see you guys over here sometime. We can
love
Yeah.
continue
to,
the conversation. There's a lot more to
Well,
talk
as I
about.
said,
love
I've
to,
just
Chris.
booked a trip. I'll be in Tokyo the first week of March, so I'm gonna look you up, Chris.
Come on by.
Well,
man.
why don't you guys, if you're hiring, let me know, and that's one way I can get over there. And Chris, you could hire me to tell you everything you already know, like the insurance industry. It was really fun to talk to you, Chris. This was really
Yeah,
enjoyable.
you guys too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris,
Yeah, it
thanks
was
again
fun.
for joining us. If people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you or Astroscale, where's the best place to do that?
Check out the website. So Astroscale's there. I've LinkedIn. You can reach out there. Always happy to continue the conversation. There's a lot more about just the background of growing a space company in this nascent ecosystem, the challenges, the excitement, the opportunities around it. So always excited to talk about that and let the system keep growing.
Brilliant. All right. Thanks, Chris. And
All right.
thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.